Psychoanalytical and personality theories, Freud. The tripartite personality structure, id, completely unconscious, driven by the pleasure principle, demands immediate gratification of basic biological drives, sex, aggression, survival. It does not care about rules, logic, or reality. Ego, mostly conscious and preconscious, driven by the reality principle. It acts as the realistic mediator, figuring out how to satisfy its demands in socially acceptable, safe ways. It uses defense mechanisms if it fails to resolve conflict. Superego, partially conscious, driven by the moral principle. It represents your internalized conscious values and societal ideals handed down by parents. It punishes the ego with guilt when rules are broken. Psychosexual theory of development. Freud argued that personality is forged through 5 childhood stages. If a child experience severe frustration or overindulgence at any age, they suffer fixation, getting emotionally stuck, which manifests as specific adult personality traits. Oral stage 0 to 1 focus is on the mouth, sucking, biting. Fixation, adult dependency, sarcasm, smoking, nail biting, or overeating. Anal stage 1 to 3 focus shifts to bowel and bladder control. Anal retentive, parents were too strict with toilet training. Adult becomes obsessively neat, controlling, punctual, and stingy. Anal expulsive, parents were too lenient. Adults become messy, disorganized, rebellious, and destructive. Phallic stage 3 to 6 focuses on the genitals. Children experience unconscious incestuous desires for the opposite sex parent. Oedipus complex for boys, Electra complex for girls, and hostility towards the same-sex parent. Resolving this requires the child to identify with the same-sex parent, giving birth to the superego. Latency stage 6 to puberty. Sexual impulses are entirely repressed. Energy is channeled into social interaction, schoolwork, friends, and hobbies. Genital stage, puberty to adulthood. Resurgence of sexual energies, but directed outside the family towards mature, romantic, and reproductive relationships. Lifespan and cognitive stage, Erickson and Piaget. Erickson's psychosocial theory. Unlike Freud, Erickson believed development is lifelong, social, not sexual, and driven by resolving a specific identity crisis at each stage. Trust versus mistrust, 0 to 1, dependent on consistent loving care, success, a secure view of the world, failure, anxiety, and deep suspicion. Autonomy versus shame/doubt, 1 to 3, learning to do things independently, walking, dressing, success, self-reliance, failure, low self-esteem, and self-doubt. Initiative versus guilt, 3 to 6, taking the lead in play and planning tasks, success, sense of purpose, failure, feeling like an annoyance or a failure. Industry versus inferiority, 6 to 12, comparing self to peers academically and socially, success, pride, competence, and belief in skills, failure, feelings of inadequacy. 5, identity versus role confusion, 12 to 18, asking who am I and experimenting with roles, values, and career paths, success, fidelity to self, failure, drifting, identity crisis, and insecurity. 6, intimacy versus isolation, early adulthood, seeking deep, committed, romantic, and platonic connections, success, long-term love, failure, loneliness, and emotional exclusion. Generativity versus stagnation, middle adulthood, contributing to the world via parenting, mentoring, or career, success, feeling useful, failure, feeling stagnant, unproductive, and 8, integrity versus despair, late adulthood, looking back on life, success, peace, wisdom, and closure, failure, bitterness, regret, and fear of death. Piaget's theory of cognitive development focuses on how your mental structure changes quantitatively and qualitatively. Sensory motor stage, 0 to 2, the infant understands the world strictly through physical movements and sensory input. The crown jewel achievement here is object permanence, understanding an object still exists even when hidden from view. 2, pre-operational stage, 2 to 7, children can use symbols and language but lack logical operations, characterized by egocentrism, the physical inability to see a situation from another person's perspective, and centration, focusing on only one feature of a situation, ignoring others. 3, concrete operational stage, 7 to 11, logical thought develops, but only when applied to physical concrete objects. The core breakthrough is conservation, understanding that changing the shape/container of a substance, like pouring water from a wide glass to a tall glass, does not change its volume, mass, or quantity. Formal operational stage, 11 plus, the brain can now process purely abstract concepts, hypothetical what-if scenarios, systemic scientific reasoning, and deductive logic. Motivation and human potential, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Needs are arranged like a pyramid. Lower level deficiency needs must be met before an individual can care about high level growth needs. Physiological, absolute survival basics, oxygen, water, food, sleep, safety, security of body, employment, health, resources, and property. Belongingness and love, friendships, family intimacy, and romantic bonds. Lack of this breeds loneliness and anxiety. Esteem, self-esteem, confidence, respect from others, and a sense of achievement. Self-actualization, the absolute peak, realizing and fulfilling your complete, unique human potential. Unlike the lower needs, this is a continuous growth motive that is never permanently satisfied. Behaviorism and socialization, conditioning attachment variables. Classical versus operant conditioning. Classical, involuntary, associating two stimuli to create an automatic biological response. Pavlov paired an unconditional stimulus, food, with a neutral stimulus, bell. Eventually, the bell became a conditional stimulus, eliciting the conditional response, salvation, all on its own. Operant, voluntary, changing behavior through consequences. Positive reinforcement, adding a desirable stimulus to increase a behavior. Example, getting cash for stray days. Negative reinforcement, removing an unpleasant stimulus to increase a behavior. Buckling your seatbelt to stop the annoying car beeping. Punishment, adding an aversion or removing a reward to decrease a behavior. Ainsworth attachment styles, evaluated using the strange situation protocol to see how infants respond to a mother leaving and returning. Secure, distressed when mother leaves, immediately pacified and joyful when she returns. Predicts healthy relationships. Insecure, avoidant, shows no visible distress when mother leaves and actively avoids or ignores her when she returns. Indicates history of rejected emotional needs. Insecure resistant / ambivalent, screams when mom leaves. When she returns, the infant seeks proximity but aggressively kicks or pushes her away. Reflects inconsistent parenting. Gardner's multiple intelligences outlawed the idea of a single IQ score, proposed that humans process information through 8 separate pathways: linguistic, logical, mathematical, spatial, musical, bodily, kinesthetic, materialistic, interpersonal, reading and managing other people's emotions, and intrapersonal. Profound self-awareness of one's own motives and feelings. Temperate versus birth order. Temperate, your biological, genetically hardwired behavioral style evident at birth. Easy / flexible, difficult / feisty, slow to warm / cautious. It forms the foundation of personality that is shaped by the environment. Birth order. Alfred Adler argued your functional position in the family structure creates distinct behavioral strategies. Firstborns cope with being dethroned by becoming perfectionists, overachievers. Middle children become diplomatic peacemakers due to being squeezed. Youngest children often become highly social, creative, or dependent risk takers. Nature versus nurture. The permanent debate: is human behavior dictated by your biology, DNA, and genetic code, nature, or is it entirely a product of your environment, conditioning, parenting, and your culture, nurture? Modern psychology views them as deeply interactive. Biological basis and moral development. Neurobiology in the teenage brain. Frontal lobe / prefrontal cortex, the seat of executive functioning, judgment, long-term planning, impulse control, and rational decision-making. It is not fully developed until around age 25. Limbic system, amygdala, and hippocampus handles primal emotions, fear, pleasure, and memory. In teenagers, the amygdala is hyperactive, reactive, while the prefrontal cortex is still maturing. This biological asymmetry explains why teens exhibit high-risking emotional volatility and intense peer-driven behaviors. Windows of opportunity, critical developmental periods where neural pathways are highly plastic. If the brain is not exposed to specific stimuli during these windows, example, language exposure in early childhood, the window shuts and the capacity can be permanently stunted. Moral development, Kohlberg versus Gilligan. Kohlberg stages, pre-conventional, morality is external, decisions are based on avoiding punishment. E.g., I won't steal because I'll go to jail, or looking for personal gain. Conventional, morality is based on social expectations, decisions are based on social approval. I want to be a good boy / girl, or strictly duty to uphold laws and maintain order. Post-conventional morality is internal. Decisions are guided by abstract, universal ethical principles, human rights, justice that can override flawed legal codes. Gilligan's ethics of care. Gilligan noted Kohlberg only studied males and placed abstract justice at the top. She argued that females are socialized differently, developing a morality rooted in relationships, responsibilities, empathy, and the prevention of real-world harm. Ethics of care, which Kohlberg erroneously scored as lower-level conventional thinking. So theoretical frameworks are essential for understanding past human behavior, but they fall short when trying to predict individual choices and or modern lifestyle changes. So paragraph 1, past structural success versus modern lifestyle failures. Argument claim state that while classical development theories brilliantly organized historical linear patterns of behavior, they fail to predict modern lifestyle shifts driven by cultural and technological evolution. Theory 1, past success, introduced Piaget's theory of cognitive development, explained how his concrete and formal operational stages successfully explain the historical trajectory of human mental development, proving that human logic universally adapted to physical environments and structured educational settings over past generations. Theory 2, modern failure, introduced Erikson's psychosocial theory as a point of contrast, explained that Erikson's rigid chronological stages, such as assigning identity versus role confusion, usually to ages 12 to 18, completely fall short when trying to predict modern 21st century lifestyles. Point out that factors like shifting cultural milestones have created a brand new emerging adulthood phase. Individuals now routinely reconstruct their core identity well into their late 20s or 30s, defying Erikson's predictable historical timeline. Paragraph 2 template. Agree conditioning patterns versus autonomous individual choices. Argument claims state that although behavioral frameworks clarify the aggregate environmental conditioning of human groups, they cannot reliably predict a single individual's autonomous choice when internal psychological complexities intersect. Theory 3, past/a great success, introduced Skinner's operant conditioning to detail how positive and negative reinforcement patterns explain how humans cohorts historically formed deep habits and cultural compliances based on the predictable rewards and punishments of their direct environments. Theory 4, individual failure, counter this using Gilligan's ethics of care, explained that when an individual confronts an intense personal dilemma, operant conditioning cannot accurately predict their behavior. An individual's final choice is not merely an automatic response to their external rewards. Instead, as Gilligan demonstrates, it is guided by a deeply internalized subjective web of emotional relationships, empathy, and unique responsibilities to others. This internal moral compass allows individuals' choices to completely break free from predictable behavioral conditioning. Brain growth and development, ages 3 to 6, most rapid growth in the frontal lobe, which is crucial for planning and organizing. Ages 6 to 12, most growth occurs in the temporal and parietal lobes, areas involved in language and spatial relations. Early childhood, children aged 3 are highly active, exhibiting the highest activity levels of the human lifespan. Daily exercise is essential for preschoolers. Neurons and neurotransmitters. Neurons, nerve cells that transmit messages. They are stimulated by sensory input or other neurons. Component cell body, dendrites, axon, myelin sheath, terminal branches of the axon. Neural impulse, the electrical signal that travels along a neuron. Neurotransmitters, chemical messengers released by neurons across the synapses to a receiving neuron. Examples include endorphins, pain/pleasure, norepinephrine, alertness, serotonin, mood, and dopamine, learning, movement, pleasure. Synapses, the gap between two neurons where neurotransmitters are released. Neuroplasticity, definition, their nervous system's capacity to adapt and modify itself in response to experience. It describes the brain's ability to reorganize, strengthen, weaken, or form new neural connections due to learning, environmental influences, or injury. Types of neuroplasticity, functional plasticity, the brain's ability to transfer functions from a damaged region to healthy, undamaged areas. Structural plasticity, physical changes in the brain's structure caused by learning and experience involving the formation of new neural connections or strengthening existing ones. Adaptive neuroplasticity, a biological process enabling the brain to restore lost abilities and strengthen remaining functions after injury. Developmental plasticity, alterations in neural pathways throughout development due to environmental interaction and learning. Neuroplasticity and development and learning. Environmental interaction, brain changes are driven by stimulation and experience. Learning-induced changes, new and strengthened neural pathways are formed as a result of learning and experience. Stages of brain plasticity in infancy, proliferation, rapid production of new neurons. Migration, neurons move to their correct locations in the brain. Circuit formation, neurons connect to established functional pathways. Synaptic pruning, elimination of unused or weaker neural connections to strengthen important pathways. Use it or lose it. Myelination, development of a myelin sheath around axons to increase the speed and efficiency of neural communication. Overproduction of neurons. The brain produces more neurons than needed because it cannot predict all future connections. This overproduction allows for flexibility, with frequently used connections being strengthened and unused ones pruned, leading to efficient and specialized neural networks. The teenage brain, puberty to age 25. The CEO of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, is responsible for emotional regulation, impulse control, decision-making, problem-solving, morals, ethics, and judgment. Brain under construction. Adolescence involves the second phase of brain development. Amygdala versus prefrontal cortex. During adolescence, the amygdala, emotional center, processes faster than the prefrontal cortex, leading to a greater likelihood of acting on emotion rather than logic. Synaptic pruning, a significant process during adolescence where unused neural connections are reduced and remaining ones are strengthened through experience. Brain disorders, neurodevelopmental disorders stem from variations in brain development and organization emerging in infancy or childhood and affecting social/academic development. Intellectual disabilities, autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. Psychiatric/psychological disorders can arise at any age and affect mood, behavior, and emotional stability. Schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorders. Schizophrenia, delusional disorder, brief psychotic disorder. Obsessive compulsive and related disorders. Obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. Hoarding disorder, body dysmorphic disorder. Trauma and stressor related disorders. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Acute stress disorder, adjustment disorders. Dissociative disorders, dissociative identity disorder, dissociative amnesia. Depersonalization/derealization disorder. Neurocognitive disorders, acquired decline in mental/cognitive function from a previous level, often occurring later in life. Delirium, Alzheimer's disease, traumatic brain injury. Personality disorders, inflexible patterns of inner experience and behavior that deviate from cultural norms. Cluster A, odd/eccentric, paranoid, schizoid/schizotypal. Cluster B, dramatic/erratic, antisocial, borderline narcissistic. Cluster C, anxious/fearful, avoidant, obsessive compulsive disorder. Dependent. Erickson's psychosocial theory of development. Core idea: human development unfolds in 8 stages throughout the lifespan, with social interaction and the resolution of psychosocial conflicts being primary drivers. Key concepts: psychosocial development. Each stage involves a conflict between psychological needs and the social environment. Success resolution leads to a virtue. Ego strength. Failure results in inadequacy. Ego identity, the conscious sense of self developed through social interaction. 8 stages: infancy 0 to 1.5 years, trust versus mistrust, virtue, hope. Toddlerhood 1 to 3, autonomy versus shame and doubt, virtue, will. Preschool 3 to 5 years, initiative versus guilt, virtue, purpose. Grade school 5 to 12, industry versus inferiority, virtue, competence. Adolescence 12 to 18, identity versus role confusion, virtue, fidelity. Young adulthood 18 to 40, intimacy versus isolation, virtue, love. Middle adulthood 40 to 65 years, generative versus stagnation, virtue, care. Late adulthood 65 years plus, integrity versus despair, virtue, wisdom. Play. Definition: a broad range of behaviors and activities, often interpreted as the opposite of work, is the chosen of others in the physical environment. Encourages social, emotional, cognitive, and physical development, provides a safe space for creative and risk-taking without fear of failure. Benefits of play: motor skills development, sensory sharpening, emotional expression, social skills, sharing, turn-taking, sequencing, delayed gratification, vocabulary growth, concentration, flexibility, role-taking, imagination, and creativity. Pardon stages of play, unoccupied play, solitary play, on-liquor play, parallel play, associative play, cooperative play. Bergen's classification of play, sensory motor play, practice play, pretense/symbolic play, social play, constructive play, games. Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, humanist approach, emphasizing free will and the drive for self-actualization. Hierarchy of needs are met in a hierarchical order with lower levels needs taking precedence. Deficit needs arise from deprivation and motivative fulfillment, physiological safety, love/belonging, esteem. Being needs arise from a desire for personal growth, self-actualization, levels bottom to top, physiological, food, water, shelter, sleep, safety, security, stability, protection, love/belonging, friendship, family, intimacy, connection, esteem, confidence, achievement, respect from self and others, self-actualization, fulfillment, purpose, personal growth, realizing full potential. Temperate definition, a child's natural way of interacting with and reacting to the world, and an innate behavioral style. 3 overall categories: easy/flexible, happy, regular habits, adaptable, calm, active/feisty, fussy, irregular habits, fearful of newness, easily upset, slow to warm/cautious, may withdraw or react negatively initially but becomes more positive with exposure. Temperamental traits, 9, each on a scale: activity level, regularity, rhythmically, approach/withdrawal, adaptability, intensity level, mood, persistence, distractibility, sensory threshold. Kohlberg's theory of moral development, core idea: morality evolves from external self-centered motivators to internalize universal ethical principles. Levels of moral development. Level 1, pre-conventional morality based on external consequences but punishment and reward. Stage 1, obedience and punishment orientation, avoid punishment. Stage 2, instrumental purpose/market orientation, self-interest, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Level 2, conventional morality based on societal norms and expectations. Stage 3, good interpersonal relationships, that's good boy, nice girl orientation, gaining social approval. Stage 4, maintaining social order/law and order orientation, upholding laws and rules. Level 3, post-conventional morality based on universal ethical principles and individual conscience. Stage 5, social contract and individual rights, laws and social contracts that can be changed if critique. Carol Gilligan argued Kohlberg's theory was biased towards a male perspective, focusing on justice. She proposed an ethics of care perspective, emphasizing relationships, responsibilities, and emotional context. Attachment, a close emotional bonding, physical contact between parents and newborn shortly after birth. Theories: Erickson, trust versus mistrust in the first year is key for attachment. Freud, oral stage attachment based on the caregiver who feeds the child. Harlow and Zimmerman. Rhesus monkey studies showed comfort from a soft surrogate mother was more important than food from a wire surrogate mother for infant attachment. Gender of the parent did not matter. Attachment styles, Mary Ainsworth. Secure attachment, caregivers consistently responsive and emotionally available. Adults are comfortable with intimacy, handle conflict well, and don't fear abandonment. Anxious attachment, anxious, preoccupied. Caregiver is inconsistent. Adults crave closeness but fear abandonment, often seeking reassurance and becoming clingy. Avoidant attachment, dismissive. Avoidant, caregiver is emotionally unavailable or dismissive. Adults value independence, pull away from closeness, and shut down emotionally during conflict. Disorganized attachment, fearful, avoidant, linked to trauma or unpredictable caregiving. Adults simultaneously want and fear close relationships, exhibiting push-pull behavior. Nature versus nurture. Nature, traits inherited from genetics, DNA, biology. Nurture, traits shaped by environment, upbringing, experiences. Blank slate, tabula rasa theory. Humans are born with no innate traits. Everything is learned through experience. Supports nurture. Behaviorism, expanded on the blank slate, arguing behavior is entirely shaped by learning and conditioning. Example, John B. Watson's Little Albert experience. B.F. Skinner's operant conditioning. Biological perspective, nature, traits like eye color, height, and predisposition, athleticism, musical ability are heavily influenced by DNA. Brain structure and chemistry also play a role in intelligence, temper, emotions, and mental health. Feral children, example Genie, cases where extreme lack of nurture highlights its critical role in developing language, social behavior, and motor skills. Psychoanalytical approach to development, Sigmund Freud, core idea, development is primarily unconscious and heavily impacted by emotion. Behavior is a surface characteristic reflecting deeper symbolic meanings and inner workings of the mind. Early experiences with parents are crucial. Motivations, the study of why we do things. Biological motives, innate physical needs, hunger, thirst. Social motives, learns psychological needs, praise, success. Of the mind, conscious, what we are aware of at any given moment. Preconscious, information not currently in awareness but easily accessible. Unconscious, inaccessible mental content, urges, desires, memories that heavily influence behaviors. Structures of personality, id, present at birth, driven by the pleasure principle, instant gratification of sexual and aggressive instincts, entirely unconscious. Ego, develops after birth, driven by the reality principle, mediates between the id and superego, finding practical ways to satisfy desires, partly unconscious. Superego develops around age 5, represents conscious and societal rules, morality principle, strives for the perfection and idealism. Partly conscious, mostly unconscious. Psychosexual stages of development. Personality is shaped by how conflicts of these stages are resolved. Fixation can occur if needs are under or over gratified. This is Freud. Oral stage 0 to 1.5 years, pleasure from the mouth, sucking, biting. Anal stage 1.5 to 3, pleasure from bowel/bladder control, toilet training. Phallic stage 3 to 6, pleasure from genitals, involves opedia/electra complexes. Latency stage 6 to puberty, libido is dormant, social and intellectual skills develop. Genital stage, puberty onwards, mature sexual interests and relationships. Defense mechanisms, unconscious strategies used by the ego to protect itself from anxiety. Example, regression, denial, projection, displacement, reaction formation, rationalization, regression. Psychoanalysis, a therapeutic technique involving free association and dream analysis to uncover unconscious conflicts. Birth order theory, Adler, core theory, a child's position within the family influences their personality and behavior. Typical characteristics, first child, oldest, responsible, structured, success-oriented, may feel a need to regain attention. Second child, competitive, may rebel, may feel insecure. Middle child, adaptable, peacemaker, may feel overlooked or insecure. Youngest child, charming, free-spirited, risk-taking, may lack self-regulation. Only child, mature, self-reliant, perfectionist, may feel incompetent due to adult capabilities. Conditioning, classical conditioning, Ivan Pavlov. Learning through association, neutral stimulus becomes associated with an unconditional stimulus that naturally elicits a response. Unconditioned stimulus naturally triggers a response. Unconditioned response, natural, unlearned reaction to the unconditioned stimulus. Conditioned stimulus, neutral stimulus that after association with the unconditioned stimulus elicits a conditioned response. Conditioned response, learned reaction to the conditioned stimulus. Operant conditioning, B.F. Skinner, learning through consequences, behavior is strengthened if followed by a reinforcer.